Hey everybody, welcome to the special edition of Superhero Speak. As you can tell, I'm not Dave, I'm JD. If you listen to this week's normal show, I was not on. I had not finished Daredevil Season 3 because, as you know, I don't get to watch a lot of TV with the 2-year-old and all. What we are doing is we're doing a special edition of the Superhero Speak this week. We're dubbing it Super Horror Speak. Dave was supposed to be on. Life gets in the way sometimes. Dave couldn't make it, so I'm on my own tonight. And with me, I'm introducing you to my brother, Matt. Matt and I are kind of tag team partners in all the video and film productions we've done over the years. And Matt is a audio specialist, and he's actually segueing his way into being a writer today. So Matt and I are going to talk today about Halloween.
Do you mean like the holiday?
That was terrible. Yes. Yes, we're talking about the holiday.
This is my persona I'm using for podcasts.
Which is sad because that's your real persona. No, we're going to talk about John Carpenter's original classic, Halloween, which I told Matt we were going to go out and talk about John Carpenter's Halloween. So what does my brother do? He promptly goes and sees the brand new one and goes, "Oh, I thought we were talking about that one." So Matt,
I wanted to bring some new information, you know?
Yeah, nothing helps talking about a 40-year-old movie than watching a movie that was just made a week ago.
But this is one of those instances where they do everything not in the spirit of Halloween, which is where I think that most of the Halloween remakes do surprisingly well. They don't follow the Halloween theme at all, and I don't know why they do that.
Well, Halloween as like a franchise is weird to begin with. Because you have Halloween, which is the movie we're going to talk about eventually, and then Halloween 2 is a pretty straight-laced sequel. And then by the time you get to Halloween 3, John Carpenter and Deborah Hill say their idea is to make it an anthology series, which would have made much more sense if they started that off with 2 and went into a different direction. But they don't. For some reason, in 3, they go in a completely different spot. They make Season of the Witch, which actually is one of the first movies I ever watched as a kid. Our cousin, this is actually when when Nana died. I don't know if I told you this. When Nana died, I had to get our cousin April was babysitting me. I think you were too little, and she actually put on and let me watch Halloween 3: Season of the Witch when I was like 3 or 4 years old. So, though I have this image in my head burned for the rest of time of those bugs eating that kid's head in the Silver Shamrock mask. I was disappointed years later to find out that movie freaking sucks. But so it holds a special place in my psyche, I guess.
Well, overall, the movie, is terrible. But even terrible movies, there's always like that one scene that's, that was fun.
Yeah, for sure.
And that one scene that I think rang home for you is a video of a little boy getting his face eaten while watching television by the mask he's wearing. I can see why that would resonate with a boy who was watching a video.
I think my cousin was with me not paying attention, but I cannot verify that as I was 3. I think that Halloween 3 does have a lot of like genius ideas that are executed absolutely terribly. But, that derails it, and then they make Halloween. So here's where stuff gets interesting. I noticed this trend. Halloween 4, which is like the Return of Michael Myers, literally the Return of Michael Myers, is made 10 years after the first Halloween movie. So these Halloween movies keep getting made on the 8s, right? And they Danielle Harris plays Laurie Strode's daughter, and then Michael Myers comes back and some stupid crap happens. And they have 2 more sequels that are just terrible. Revenge of Michael Myers and Curse of Michael Myers, which even Paul Rudd couldn't redeem. Curse of Michael Myers, it's so freaking bad. And then what's interesting is how H2O, the water movie, comes out in 1998, and what they do something interesting is they basically forget that 3, 4, 5, and 6 ever happened. So Halloween 7 is a sequel to Halloween 2.
There's something good to think about it.
Well, here's what's interesting is this is why I think Halloween works well on this superhero podcast, because this is the first time where we ignore continuity in H2O. As they say, remember Halloween's 3, 4, 5, 6? They didn't happen. Like the Danielle Harris stuff, it never happened. Laurie Strode's off. She's a schoolmaster here. She changed her name. She's got Josh Hartnett as her kid, right? And then H2O's okay. Kevin Williamson from Scream, back when he could do no wrong. Dawson's Creek fame. That's his movie. And then they made a horrible sequel to that one called Halloween Resurrection, which I remember you and I saw when we went. I don't know if you remember this. We went when Spider-Man first came out. We went to see Spider-Man, but the line was too long, so we went to Jason X first. Do you recall that?
Yeah. Jogging down memory lane.
And they had a trailer for Halloween Resurrection, and I remember watching that trailer going, well, this looks like shit. And I think I caught it years later on HBO, and it was freaking awful. So then now Rob Zombie does his two movies, which the first comes out in 2007. He missed the mark, should have put out in 2008 for the 30th anniversary. But, like everything else in those movies, complete failure. And then again, this current movie, this 2018 reimagination continuation of Halloween, now they're doing it again, where they say, okay, we're going to ignore everything past Halloween, the original, and Halloween 2 never happened. And then Jamie Lee Curtis has another family that's off doing their thing. So it's so interesting to me that Halloween is one of the only film franchises that has 4 separate deviations within the course of the series. It's very much like comics where you just kind of retcon and ignore things you don't like. I always joke on this show about the salad bowl of continuity. And no film franchise embraces that concept more than Halloween. Because when you look at the Halloween tree, it goes Halloween 1, Halloween 2, Halloween 4, 5, Curse of Michael Myers. Then it goes Halloween, Halloween 2, H2O, Resurrection. And now it's Halloween and then Halloween 2018. And then you also have the 2 Rob Zombie movies and Season of the Witch out there doing its own thing. There is no franchise in film that exists quite like Halloween.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would say that with all the sequels that are subpar or par at best, the reason I think people keep going back to see a new sequel or a new remake is just because how well done the first one was.
For sure.
How much it resonated with people.
Absolutely. I think one reason this movie works so well is because John Carpenter is the reason, number one. But what I think is interesting about this is I got this theory that the best horror movies are not made by quote unquote horror film directors, right? Like The Exorcist, made by William Friedkin. His other best well-known movie is The French Connection. John Carpenter, before he did Halloween, he directed Dark Star, which is a sci-fi comedy, and then Assault on Precinct 13, which is kind of a crazy gonzo, super ultra-violent, cop story. And then he makes Halloween right after that. The Omen was made by Richard Donner. Superman. Jaws, Steven Spielberg. Even Wes Craven, Wes Craven's Nightmare on Elm Street is one of the best, the original. He definitely has more of a horror pedigree than most. But he went out and made Music of My Heart with Gloria Estefan. So so many people think you have to be like this Dario Argento kind of guy who only makes horror movies. And I don't think that's necessarily true. Even Stephen King, the most prolific specific horror writer of the 20th century, he bobs and weaves out of the horror genre.
It's true. And I think that all those examples that you gave, I think the number one reason why Halloween works so well and why the remakes and the sequels of Halloween tend to falter a little bit is because they change an overall simple theme. And to me, that the theme is all those horror movies, including Halloween, the theme really is nature, like man versus nature. Like Michael Myers isn't a person. He's not a thing. He's just a force of God.
He's the shape.
He's a volcano. He's an earthquake. The more you try to make the earthquake or volcano believable, the less fun it becomes.
Absolutely.
The more real it becomes.
We talk about this.
I think that's what they keep doing with all these sequels. They keep trying to explain who Michael Myers is, who it was, and why he does what he does. And it's more fun to not know and just imagine yourself.
Totally. You and I talk a lot about writing, and I have this theory on villains that I think that too often we fall in love with villains And when we do that, we want to learn more about them, and we actually defang the monster is the term I like to use. Like, you learn too much. You put it the best. Mike, that's exactly what John Carpenter says too, is that Michael Myers isn't a character. He is a force of nature. Even though he's referred to as Michael Myers throughout the story, in the movie, in the credits, he's credited as the Shape. He is just this force of God, this force of evil. And I never thought about it, but you're right. That Halloween is totally a man.
It's weird to say like force of God because it sounds like he's a priest or something.
Well, he's not a force.
Yeah, force of God.
He wouldn't do that to John Carpenter. Wouldn't do that till he made the Prince of Darkness years later.
I think I did that first. So
you did call him.
I'm sorry.
You did call him a force of God, and then you threw me under the bus when I used your phrase.
Well, it's about the black uniform with white collar. Yeah.
Oh, he's here all week, folks.
Yeah. Actually, I'm not. I mean, I've got things to do. Not important things, but like vacuuming and
but
groceries.
Things nonetheless. But no, you're right. Like, he is this force of nature in the movie, and I think that especially in the '90s, like, because I noticed that in the early to mid '90s, there was this. There are 3 films with the 3 big horror franchises: Freddy's Dead, Jason Goes to Hell, and Curse of Michael Myers, where they go over and abound to explain everything weird about the villains, and they're all terrible movies because they really abandon the concepts of why this movie works so much, and they bog you down full of stories. Like Michael Myers gets to be like this druid thing, which is weird because Season of the Witch was also about druid things, and there's no attempt to connect those 2 stories, which is just bizarre that they never made an effort to try to bring that in. I don't know. Season of the Witch is such a tremendous failure of a film that I think that we could have a whole conversation just on that alone, but we're not doing that. We're talking about Halloween, 1978. John Carpenter. He would go on after this to make The Fog, then Escape from New York, then Starman, a cool little film with Jeff Bridges that is weird, followed by the greatest film of all time, Big Trouble in Little China, followed by Prince of Darkness, They Live. So, I mean, like, he's not really a horror filmmaker so much as he leans more into the sci-fi, the sci-fi realm of things, or, like, John Carpenter is a real artist in the fact that he just kind of does what's interesting to him. And I think this is important to Halloween because of the tone of the film. Like, Halloween is totally credited as the first slasher film, right? It's not. There's still Black Christmas came before this, and The Town That Feared Sundown, and Texas Chainsaw. But Halloween's really the one that kind of gets the machine moving, like gets the sequel stuff going. Like, it becomes the first like franchisable horror film, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And still to this day, I would still call it a stalker film, not really a slasher film, because I think like there's so many like better slasher films out there that have taken the idea of slashing and cutting and attacking someone in a much better way than Halloween ever did. After rewatching the movie, just watching the actual stabbing something, and it looks kind of ridiculous. But
I disagree that it's better. That you say that there are better slasher films. I don't think there are better slasher films.
To signify slasher films, though, I would say I like to think of it as a stalker film. It is. Like, the whole movie is meant to be a stalking film. It's not meant to be. The best parts aren't the slasher moments. They build up to it, but it's the build-up that makes the movie so special, so
for
great.
Sure.
And I think it makes the movie so different than other horror movies of the time, because I think their use of steady cam wide shots, looking through windows, over their shoulders, it just feels like watching somebody stalk someone else, or you're stalking someone else at the same time. The audience is stalking people, rather than like waiting to see when the guy jumps out from the closet or from wherever just to attack somebody. It's like you're there, you're part of the stalker yourself.
You're right. This movie is so different. It's like I said, this movie sets the precedent for what horror movies should be, and a lot of the editing tricks are what was taken from this movie, and like the concepts behind it. But the actual filmmaking of this is very, very unique to Halloween. Like, it's not as special effectsy as like Nightmare on Elm Street would be. It's not as gory as Friday the 13th would be, but it's a better film. And Jason's pretty much Michael Myers redone, But I mean, there's something about the Michael Myers character, even the breathing thing, that just works better. And like, this is a movie that could not be made today. When I say that is like, you talked about the jump stuff. Like every horror movie now is like, it's easy to do the jump scares or the music. It's really loud, and then it comes down. You jump because you're human. It's a visceral reaction, but it doesn't actually create tension there. Halloween is all about tension and mood. Like, it's all about the mood that Carpenter sets. Like, Halloween is creepy because, like you said, it's a stalker film. It's
In all fairness, I don't think it's easy to make that film back then as as it is today to make a lot of big production horror movies. It was still very much on the low end as far as budgets go.
For sure.
Horror movies. So I was it was still scraping everything together kind of movie. It was still hard to make that movie. Would it be hard? I think it would be harder to make that kind of a movie nowadays, only because it's so hard to resist being a filmmaker. And I've only made a few projects myself, but making things like that and not try to cut like crazy, not cut back and forth, not do a bunch of weird things with your camera lenses and your angles
and your editing.
To try to be very simple. And it's hard to do.
Yeah, you're right. And that's what makes this movie different. Is like back in the day, like in the 70s, up till about the 80s, the way you made a movie was a movie played out in masters, big wide shots, and then you punched in for your close-ups and your medium shots. But I mean, like, it was very, very common in an older movie to let things play out in a master shot, a wider shot. And you watch Star Wars. Star Wars, it plays out very much master, cut, master, cut, and Halloween does that too. Nowadays, everything, the cameras are moving constantly. The editing is just it's like something like 2 shots per second in most movies. Like, the pacing of a movie is much, much different now. That's what they couldn't make this movie. I don't think directors are disciplined enough to make a movie like this today, where you sit there and you hold a shot. My favorite shot in the whole movie is when Laurie's just standing there, like trying to figure out what's going on, and then very, very slowly you see the shape mask just appear out of the shadow, and it still works. Like, the tension is still so palpable. Like, it's so much better and more visceral to me because you see it and you're like, oh no, he's right there. Then today you'll just be like, boom, boom, cut, boom, boom, cut, boom, boom, cut.
Yeah.
Like, and it that beats you up, and it gives you a different kind of more of a roller coaster feeling. Where this movie, and I think Exorcist can really get in your head and mess with you a little bit.
Yeah, I agree. I think one of the beauties of just watching this movie over again was, besides just doing a master shot, which is just trying to capture all of the action in one shot, and then kind of punch in for like the emotional facial cues, or the good lines, it's not even like a master shot for the most part. For most of the time, it's like a super wide shot, which is like almost like a modern day concept that people love doing nowadays. It's people are very small in the frame. Like, they're either walking towards the camera, very, very, very tiny, and the world is very big around them. And then all of a sudden they'll cut to like a body part of Michael Myers, whether it be like the back of his head, his arm, whatever it is, not fully like seeing him, but it just gives you the impression that he is bigger than they are. Like, he is more powerful than they are. And just setting that up beautifully throughout the first half of the film to build up to those scenes where, Laurie and him are duking it out. You already feel like the people in this movie are so tiny. And this thing is just so huge. Like, even though he takes off his mask halfway through, it still feels like, yeah, I gotta look at him, he's human, but he still doesn't feel human to me.
And I think that plays well into the whole thing of it being a nature thing, because it does seem like the characters are really dwarfed by the enormity of the situation. It's not the first Stalker movie. I mean, they did like When a Stranger Calls and stuff like that. But there's just something different about this movie. And then, like, I was talking about this where I had a friend who saw The Godfather years after he saw Goodfellas and basically all the movies that are inspired from The Godfather. And he finally got to me. He's like, I've seen it before. And even though, like, everything that he saw was taken from The Godfather, by the time he got to it, it seemed kind of played out. I think a lot of Halloween kind of plays off the same way, where you've seen it. Like, if you've never seen the original Halloween, like, but if you were to watch it now, there'd be nothing in there that would be like unique to you. Like, I don't think there's much of any blood, to be honest. And then there's pause here, make an edit. There's like next to no blood, and it's like the thing where he does the Undertaker, where he sits up straight, and they do the cutaways where he's not there. The Batman, he just keeps Batmaning out of the shot. Like, a lot of that stuff is influenced, and they get the final girl, and that whole all that stuff kind of comes from Halloween. So I get why a modern horror fan could come to this movie and be like, I don't get it. But I think it kind of ignores, one, the impact that this movie had, and two, how a good film is actually made. And again, this isn't a perfect movie. Like, the way Michael Myers breaks out of the insane asylum is really cheeseball. Like, he steals her car because, the nurse just couldn't get out, and they're getting we never find out how the big breakout of all, like, when they get to when Loomis and the nurse get to the Smiths Grove Sanitarium, which was based on the Elgin Mental Health Facility, the Elgin Mental Health Center that's down the street from my house in Elgin, Illinois. Side note. When they get there, the inmates are just literally walking. What's a humble brag? That's not really a humble brag. Like, there's still a sign on the side of the road that says, don't pick up.
Okay, it's a Halloween brag. How about that?
Halloween brag.
We'll start a new hashtag.
The sign on the road still says, don't pick up hitchhikers, which is really creepy. But aside from that, like, when you get there... Which is just
good advice. I mean, let's be honest.
For in general, yeah, you probably shouldn't pick up hitchhikers anywhere, especially near an insane asylum. But when they get to the said insane asylum, the inmates are literally wandering the asylum, and we don't have any idea why, nor is it ever addressed. They just kind of are. And then the car gets stolen, and Donald Pleasence is simply there to relay information to us throughout the entire movie. Mm-hmm. Like, that is his major function in the movie, is to be the old white guy who relays information. Like, it's totally a trope of fiction that I think we're all guilty of. You have the one character who specifically exists to inform the audience what is happening.
Yeah, Dr. Exposition.
Yeah. Dr. Exposition. That's exactly. Dude, I'm stealing that.
It's very true. Yeah.
But I mean, like, and then they're like, he's just telling you what's going on the whole time. So that's, I know. When we were watching that, I'm like, that's kind of stupid. But once the movie gets going, I mean, it's pretty good. And I think that a lot of it holds up. And it's all tension. It's all wondering, when is Michael going to get to Laurie? When is Michael going to get her? Like, it's all kind of built on that. Is he going to hurt the kids?
Yeah.
Which I think which you said in the new one. I haven't seen the new Halloween, but you said in the new one he kills a kid, right?
Yeah, and then when he crosses some boundaries. I mean, looking back on the first one, he kind of does kill 2 dogs, which is just as harsh to me.
Does he kill 2 dogs? I know he killed the one. Does he kill another?
It's weird. They walk into the house the first time, the officer and Dr. Loomis, and they stare at like a dead dog, and it's still warm. And Loomis is convinced that he either killed it or he ate it or both. It's never really heavily answered. But
he does.
And then the second one, the dog's like protecting I can't think of her, Annie or whatever. Protecting, and the dog goes quiet, and Michael Myers gives it like the bear hug from hell, and just takes it out. It's like, oh god, just seeing the dog's legs go limp, even to get a dog acting that well with that low budget of a film. I think it's like super slow motion down, but it's just it delivers the effect very well.
Yeah, that was honestly the most disturbed that I was in the movie. Yeah. And I guess in my head, I made the connection that it was the same dog. But now that you're putting it to me, like, well, that can't possibly be the same dog. You're right, he does kill 2 dogs. One of them's off camera. And I guess this one, he kills a kid in the new one.
Yeah, it's kind of a rough scene. And it was weird. I was watching it, but after watching the modern one, the modern remake, or the modern addition to Halloween, named Halloween as well.
Halloween 2018.
And like, there's a scene where the kids are bullying the main kid being babysat. I can't think of the kid's name, the character's name, but it's 3 kids in a school setting bullying him, teasing about the boogeyman's coming. And the boogeyman does come and kind of bumps into one of the bully kids, but just kind of like lets the bully kid go. And all I could think is watching this movie back again, I'm like, why doesn't they kill the bully kid? Like, the bully kid should die too. What the heck?
Well, the kid is Tommy Doyle, And I think we were talking about the new Halloween, but yeah, that happens in the first one. It's very Carrie, shall we say, that scene.
Yeah.
And you're right. The bully kids just do kind of get away with it. But I mean, I think at the same time, if Michael Myers does kill the bully kid, then we're all like, yeah, he killed the bully kid, even though we're talking about children.
Just looking back as again, I know he kills a whole bunch of people in the movie. Like, well, these kids are jerks. Everybody else is kind of okay. They're like people. They're doing dumb stuff, but this kid's a jerk.
I don't know if they're okay. Let's get into the plot actually of this movie. Laurie Strode is a high school. I think she's a senior. They don't really.
I don't remember if they actually say a grade level on her or not.
Maybe I'm just making the connection in my head that she's a senior. Her and her two friends, Annie and Linda, her two friends, who are a lot more typical. It's so typical horror movie. Like it's become cliche. You have the two non-virginal friends and the virgin friend. Guess who's going to survive? Laurie on Halloween is stuck watching Tommy Doyle. Annie is stuck watching her across the street neighbor Lindsay, and Linda and her boyfriend are basically determined to hump around the entire town.
Well, it's funny. I remember reading something about John Carpenter saying, "Well, it wasn't really about like the virgin aspect, like the virgin, person who's going to be able to outwit everybody else or beat the bad guy in the end. It's more just about the person who is more focused, the person who isn't as easily distracted by sex and drugs and whatever."
That's interesting. That's the person who's not as easily distracted, because she is like on a moral scale, not just the sex and drugs things, but like Annie is the worst babysitter ever. Like,
well, in all fairness, I think every babysitter in this movie is the worst babysitter ever. I think it was actually a tagline as like the babysitter murders. I think it's how they originally had that. I think the producer actually had a concept of the babysitter murders, and then came to Carpenter and Hill, and Carpenter and Hill was like, "Well, we got this idea for you. We can we can mix them together and came up with like Halloween."
The Babysitter Murders is the worst title I've ever heard in my entire life. That sounds like something that would have been like Film of the Week on ABC in the 70s. I don't think Laurie's a bad babysitter. I mean, she picks up the slack at one point, and she spends the whole night with Tommy. Like, she's reading his terrible comic books with him, and those are some terrible comic books. They make a jack-o'-lantern. They're watching... Oh, did you catch what movie they were watching?
There was the Thing, correct?
The Thing from Another World.
Yes.
The original Howard Hawks version, which I forgot when I was naming off all the Carpenter movies. John Carpenter went on to remake as The Thing.
So the Thing,
that was prophetic on his part. I thought that was pretty cool. But no, Annie is the worst babysitter. Like, first she spills sauce or something all over, and then she feels the need to take all of her clothes off right then and there, and it's just so bizarre. And for some reason, they have the family has their laundry in an outside room. I mean, that's just like that was totally plot control, like plot convenience to have her leave the house. But then she decides to go like pick up her boyfriend and hump him and just dump Lindsay off with Laurie. Like, you got to keep in mind, Annie's doing a job here. She's trying to make some money, and she's totally just pawned it off on her friend, who, if this all goes perfectly, will not see any of this. Like, this is total exploitation of the workers. And this is why the proletariat should band together against the bourgeoisie.
Welcome to the new podcast, ladies and gentlemen. It's the podcast within the podcast called Hidden Messages in Government.
Socialism in horror films. It's true. Like, she's the worst babysitter. Like, and then did you catch that remark that the boyfriend makes? We're like, we're Linda's boyfriends. Oh, we'll take each other's clothes off, then we're gonna take Lindsay's clothes off. Lindsay's like 6. Like, that's fucked up. Like, that is in a movie about about a little kid that murders his sister and comes back to kill more people later on. That is the most fucked up line in the whole thing.
You know, it's funny. I didn't even register with me that he was talking about the kid in the house. I just figured he meant the other babysitter.
You know, I did too. There's going to be
some threesome opportunity with the third babysitter.
I rewound.
Annie, and I'm like, oh, okay, whatever. This guy's got lost hope. Like, wait, you're right. That was a totally different girl's name.
Yeah. It was Lindsay. It's the little girl. I heard it. I'm like, I must have heard that wrong. And I had to pause and rewind a bit and play. I'm like, that's fucking weird. Like, I know it's, the 70s. Everybody nowadays. I'm going to go on a limb and say even joking about child rape isn't funny. You know, like, that's a weird scene. Or a weird line, I should say. I think that's justification. I think that's perfect justification for getting rid of him, because they also, as far as Annie is the worst babysitter of all time, Linda is the worst friend of all. Well, she's not even a friend. Like, she's just a freeloader. Like, they go into Lindsay's parents' house and hump all over somebody else's house. Like, it's completely disrespectful. Like, as far as, like, the whole horror tropes of, can't have sex, can't do this, can't do that. Like, they're just breaking and entering and humping everywhere. That's messed up.
Yeah. So the very first kill that Michael Myers does is his older sister, and it's she's babysitting him, assumed, because the parents come home at the very end, and he just kind of walks in, and the boyfriend, I guess, the male comes out of the walks down the stairs and walks on out. Then he walks up, right? Walks up the staircase.
Yeah.
So is there like a whole length of just? Is this really just about sex?
It's funny that John Carpenter says that it isn't when so much of the story is. And I wonder if this is one of those auteurism things where you don't know. Like, a lot of times when directors are making movies, they put themes and plots and like motifs and stories that sometimes register on a subconscious level. Mm-hmm. So I wonder if he even realized he was doing this. Because I think this is the movie that really sets the template for sex bad. I don't even know if he meant for it, because judging by everything that I've read that he says about the movie, it doesn't seem like he was going for that at all. And yet that is a theme that was so plainly obvious that it became a trope in the entire genre.
Yeah.
It's weird. Yeah, and then so Laurie's watching Tommy Doyle, and then the boogeyman keeps approaching him, and eventually you have your big conflict where Dr. Loomis comes and tries to stop Michael. The mask comes off. Is it me, or does Michael's face look weird when the mask comes off?
Yeah, it's got kind of that, like, upper left, like, hanging eye kind of thing. Like, not like he's Chunk from, or not like he's from Goonies or anything. But,
Sloth from Goonies.
Sloth, thank you, Chunk. But, like, yeah, it's kind of like an eye disfiguration, and like, you never had that as a young boy.
Yeah, that's so weird too.
So it's like, did they add that in on purpose? Was that?
Yeah.
I don't know.
How does the kid Michael Myers wind up looking like that? It's
so. You know what? Now I'm thinking about it. He does get stabbed in the eye.
Well, that's true. She does stab him in the eye. That could have been
with a hanger.
With a hanger.
Yeah. So I wonder if it's just a.
That could be
a deep cut in there.
That could be. It was a deep cut. It was a hanger in the eye. It's just so bizarre how the things in this movie that really shouldn't work do kind of come together. Because on like a total plot level, it's very simple. And like I said, we've got Dr. Loomis, who's, like you call him Dr. Exposition, where he's just explaining everything so the audience catches up. And he's also, I guess he's kind of the hero of the story, but he doesn't really do anything. Like, he shoots Jason out of a window and Jason gets away. So I mean, it kind of really functions as a great chapter. And I get why everyone has wanted to make more movies based on this one, because it really is wide open. I mean, then they went later on that made that Laurie was Michael's little sister, and like he's got to keep coming back and killing his family, and yada yada yada. But when you leave it, and I guess this is why this movie keeps getting reimagined and resequeled in so many ways, is because the doors are wide open for lots of interpretation and lots of flexibility and space to go with the character, because there just isn't anything about him. Like, you don't know anything. You don't know why he did it. Like Nightmare on Elm Street, they tell you Freddy Krueger was a child killer. The parents got together, murdered him, and now he's back and killing kids in their dreams. We get an origin, right? Friday the 13th, Jason drowned in Camp Crystal Lake. He's come back from the dead to kill kids. It's really his mom, but for the sake of the franchise, it's Jason. This one, we don't really. I mean, Jason killed his sister. Why? Nobody knows. And then 15 years later, he comes back. Why? Nobody knows. He just kind of does. And I guess there's so much open space for someone to just go, I think I can add this, or I think I can add that. I can talk about this. Like, I get why there's this hunger for writers and directors to go back and kind of add to the mythos.
I don't think they add to the mythos. I think they answer questions. You know what I mean? more than they add to like the mysterious behind Michael Myers. It's like, well, there's questions of Michael Myers. We're just going to answer the questions in a new and crazy way,
I
rather
think
than
the
we're going
I
to
think
add
the
new
point though, yeah,
stories to
you're
Michael
not wrong.
Myers. You know,
Yeah, I
and I
think you're
think
not
that's
wrong.
the kind of the beauty of the film is it does just the right amount of leaving kind of questions out there, leaving things to your imagination, rather than I think a lot of horror movies that miss the mark tend to underdo that. They tend to try to answer every question and leave no stone unturned, except for like one big shocking stone unturned. You know?
Yeah, I think you're right about that. I don't know. I think they're trying to answer. Like I don't think anybody goes out of their way to make a bad movie. Halloween 3, we discussed that.
No, it's
Um,
true. I don't think they go out of the way to make a bad movie. I think they go out of the way to answer a question and try to have fun with it and see what they can explore. And it becomes like a man versus man story. And then when it becomes that like real, then you start realizing it's a stupid guy in a mask. And then it
yeah.
becomes like, well, why am I afraid of this? It's kind of, I guess he's super strong, but he's still just a dude in a mask. This is kind of ridiculous in a bad way.
Well, even in the first Halloween, he's not like super strong.
True.
Like he's just a guy, and there's nothing.
If you say taking 6 bullets to the chest and falling through a window and landing on your back, and then walking up 2 seconds later, not
That's not
super strong. Okay, yeah, sure.
that's not strength. That's immortality, or
Super resiliency,
super. One of Superman's least talked about powers, super resiliency.
super math.
Superman.
I love these Silver Age Superman.
Oh, I don't want to get going on. My love of Superman. Like I don't think that, but that's
At
not
this
like
point, do we have a
Rob
Silver
Powell.
Age Michael Myers?
You know what, dude? There's so many reinterpretations. I totally think you could call. You can. I think the Silver Age Michael Myers. This is definitely the Golden Age Michael Myers, right? The Silver Age Michael Myers is the one that shows up at Halloween 4. Oh, I can totally do this. The Silver Age Michael Myers is the one that shows up at Halloween 4. So Return of Michael Myers, Revenge of Michael Myers, Curse of Michael Myers. The Danielle Harris movies. That's the Silver Age Michael Myers. The Bronze Age Michael Myers is the H2O Michael Myers. The one that comes back with Jamie Lee Curtis and the one that had a kung fu fight with Buster Rhymes. That is your Bronze Age Michael Myers.
So, is there ever going to be a multiverse Michael Myers movie?
That's Rob Zombie. Rob Zombie's Michael Myers is the multiverse Michael Myers. It is your Michael Myers Prime, if you will, like Superboy Prime, pounded on the walls of reality to change,
That's the
to change history. It is. That's the Michaelverse. It totally is. This is why this works for superhero speak. And this Michael Myers here is kind of your modern age Michael Myers. Your rebirth Michael Myers for our DC fans out there. This is the Michael Myers that it has the Golden Age origin, but none of that other Silver Age stuff happened. And even the Bronze Age, that's like your I take that back. That's the post-crisis Michael Myers. The one that came out of H2O. That's like your Burn reboot Michael Myers.
I'm just imagining the Jay Garrick of Michael Myers. Michael Myers wearing a helmet with like little wings on it.
I have to draw a picture. I have to do that and tag John Wesley Shipp in a picture because I think he would appreciate that.
Oh god!
But again, I think this is why this movie works well for a show like Superhero Speak, because it's not just the movie; it's the franchise. It's what was done with it. Like when Jerry Siegel wrote Action Comics 1, he didn't have any idea that it would become what it became, and it would branch out the way it did. And I think that John Carpenter and Michael Myers could be the same thing, because so much has been done with the character. Like Freddy had a reboot, Jason had a reboot. Actually, Jason's gonna have another reboot produced by LeBron James.
I was hearing about that, and honestly, I've been dying for the Jason Space Jam crossover forever.
I would pay to watch that. I mean,
where they're fighting the actual Monstars, where it's Jason and Michael Myers and
Michael Myers and Freddy Krueger. I would watch that movie.
That is the dumbest movie idea we've ever had.
Ever. Yes. Too bad we can't do it.
Yes. Yeah, too bad. I think that, sorry, world.
Yeah. LeBron, if you're listening, get on it. I think that this movie works great with people who like comics, because it does play with continuity, and continuity is such an important part of this. Even Freddy Krueger, he had his system of movies. New Nightmare really kind of plays with the idea of Earth Prime, if you will. So it kind of does flirt with that notion, because it's the idea that Freddy Krueger, in that movie, Freddy Krueger is the embodiment of all evil, which kind of offshoots from the original series. Jason is pretty straightforward until you get to the reboot, which was terrible. So it's a little bit different than that. But Michael Myers and Halloween, like, there's something about being like, it wasn't the original, because Leatherface came before him. But I don't think Leatherface comes back and becomes what he became if it's not for Michael Myers and the franchise launch of Halloween. Because Texas Chainsaw 2 doesn't come out till 86.
Mm.
You know? So it's a good 12 years after the original. And it's interesting to me that, like, what's done with the continuity, it fascinates me.
Yeah, and they keep doing it. Whether we want them to do it or not, it keeps happening. It won't stop.
I think
it is the force of nature now.
That's true. I think they just greenlit the sequel to this current Halloween. So if it's going to be the third Halloween 2, I don't know. But I mean, it's interesting that Michael Myers, like, much like the character himself, just won't die.
Halloween night. A small American town. 15 years ago. Michael? Halloween.
I spent 8 years trying to reach him, and then another 7 trying to keep him locked up, because I realized that what was living behind that boy's eyes was purely and simply evil. I think he'll come back.
Exploring uncharted territory.
Totally charted.
Just talk.
Sure. The only reason she babysits is to have
Halloween.
Okay, come on out.
He came home.
Like, this is the entire climax.
Mm-hmm.
That's like shocking that it gives away that much.
It's so much of a trailer as it is just a short synopsis of the entire film.
Like, that's exactly what it was. I wonder, was that? I think we both thought we were watching the original trailer. Was that actually the original trailer we watched, or is that just some fan edit?
I don't know. It's got the Vincent Price-ish voiceover.
Well, it does. Yeah, it does have that. I mean, it felt like the original trailer. I don't know. Like I said, it gives away the entire climax. Not the entire, but I mean, like a good chunk of the climax, which I guess if you're going to advertise, is the way to go. I mean, I do feel like I watched half the movie just watching that trailer. Like, we were talking about the Steadicam shot. Like, Rocky is the first movie that gets the credit for the Steadicam. The shot specifically where he's running through Philadelphia and runs up the stairs. I think that this movie comes out a year after Rocky, and like I said, it does a similar thing with the Steadicam. It gives the perspective of Michael Myers, especially in that opening shot. It's kind of ropish, where it feels like it's being done in one take, but there's a couple, like, if you know what you're looking for, you can find a couple of the edits clearly, specifically when he puts the mask on and stuff. But it's really, really well done. And it, like you talked about, it's a stalker film, and I think that first scene really sets the pace for that, like really sets the tone. You know, where you don't. I think what makes this movie different is like you get the killer's POV, and I think a lot of this movie is told from the killer's POV.
Yeah, I agree. It was not his point of view. It's definitely like over his shoulder.
Yeah,
like you're still watching the world through the way he watches the world.
Yeah. It's almost like he functions more as the protagonist than Laurie does in some parts, you know?
Yeah.
Weird. It's a movie that is different, and it does that without you really knowing anything about him, other than he really likes to kill people.
Yeah, and just watching the film over again, as far as Steadicams go, as well as that first Steadicam worked. Like, there's another Steadicam shot where the two doctors are walking out of the mental institution, and Loomis is gonna hop in his car and speed away to go get Michael Myers. And it's one long tracking shot, which is very gutsy to do at the time, especially. But it was one of those shots where nowadays that'd be another take, or they would have cut somewhere because it kind of had some strobe to it, some unnecessary shake. But at the same time, that's kind of what made it not perfect.
That's what I like about it, is that it wasn't.
Like, a lot of Beatles
perfect.
fans love hearing, oh wow, in this song you can totally hear the squeaking pedal drum from Ringo, and that's what makes it kind of crappy, but it makes it great at the same time because you can tell it wasn't overdone, it wasn't
Are you
overproduced.
serious?
Yeah, there's a lot of little things in Beatles songs you can kind of hear. They just kind of did that, a take or one or two takes, and it's kind of like, the spirit's here. We're just gonna leave it in. No one will really notice anyway.
What song? Do you know what song Type Your Head has Ringo's pedal squeak in it? I've never heard that.
Like a pedal squeak, like a little bit of a squeak when he hits his bass drum, his kick drum. I cannot think of the song off the top of my head.
Well, that's crazy.
I want to say it's "Love Is All You Need," but I can't think of. I want to say it's that.
I have to Google this. Ringo pedal. Ringo's squeaky drum pedal. All I've got to do. Oh, A Day in the Life.
A Day in the Life. Okay.
Huh. Crazy. Learn something new on this show every time. Like I was saying before, I dig that. Like the Rocky Steadicam shot is so clean, but in this one, it is a little bumpy because I had to look up. I'm like, is this Steadicam or is this just really good handheld?
Yeah.
It's Steadicam, but there's just enough bump in it where it feels real. Like there's another one. Like I think Evil Dead kind of got the idea from that on this movie because they kind of have that big old
with
tracking
the
shot.
board.
Yeah, they did it with the
one
board.
One long 2x4 to hold the camera and have two guys holding the opposite ends of the 2x4 just run.
Yeah, they bolted a camera to a 2x4 and two dudes just ran. So that has a totally different look to it. But this one is almost
another movie
it's halfway between
it. That just works really well because of a Force City.
Yeah, the Deadites. Who? Bruce Campbell.
That's exactly the Force City I was talking about.
Yeah, that's exactly accurate. Those movies don't work without Bruce Campbell, as was proven by the remake.
I know you were saying earlier that shot of Laurie and Michael Myers' face popping out was your favorite shot.
I love it. I love that
entire
shot.
film. But looking back on it, for me, the one shot that really cements it that works so well is the train. There's a shot where Dr. Loomis is literally stumbling across Michael Myers' technically his first kill, which was some random guy out of a garage repair truck. And it happens to be next to a train track. And the train just slowly, the sound of it the whole time is just creeps up and just hits you in the face. And the train is just so huge in the shot. And Loomis is just so tiny next to it that it just kind of reiterates that feel of this huge force of nature and humans are tiny and powerless against it. And to me, that's awesome. That's the way to set a tone,
That's why I like talking to you, because you get these. I'm a pure visual guy, and you sit there and you Matt, like I said before, Matt works in audio, so he picks up on these sound elements of these movies much better than I do. And I never would have thought of that, but I know. because sound gets you on such a visceral level, much more subtly than visuals do.
It's true.
That
If
you
there's
just
one director that loves to like, have his hand like deep into the soundtrack, it's John Carpenter. Like,
for sure, like we talked
every
about
one
before,
of his projects, he loves playing with the sound. And of course, it was just watching the film over again. I didn't actually notice this until I watched the credits the second time. It was the sound was all created by Carpenter, but Carpenter used like a stage name, and it was the Bowling Green Philharmonic Orchestra.
Is it the Bowling? Because I know, like in Big Trouble in Little China, his band is called the Coupe de Villes, and I picked it out because I remember I'm watching the movie, and it's a scene where her and Annie are in the car talking, and there's 2 songs on the radio, and there's a cutaway in between. The first song is clearly Carpenter's band because you can hear it. Like if you've heard the Big Trouble in Little China theme song, it's got this Big Trouble in Little China, like this crazy voice, and it's Carpenter's. And I heard the same thing. Like when they're sitting in the car, and then they cut back and there's a completely different song playing. Did you catch it?
Is the Don't Fear the Reaper?
It's Don't Fear the Reaper.
Yeah.
Which shocked me. I'm like, where did they get the budget to pay for Blue Oyster Cult?
All the budget went to that, Donald Pleasance, and getting a Panavision camera.
It didn't go into The Mask. Everyone knows it's a William Shatner from, I think, Devil's Reign. Mask that was spray painted, but I mean,
the music though is just so simply amazing. It really just draws you. It doesn't really distract you from the theme of the whole thing. It just kind of keeps you centered there. It's really over the top and powerful, for like how like loud the soundtrack really is throughout the entire movie, and it doesn't really creep at all. It just kind of like spooks you a little bit, like. Most of like the horror stuff is kind of done like in traditional music style in 4/4, except for the theme. The whole theme of the entire song is in 5/4, which really sounds weird, and it really isn't that dramatic of a difference until you start like timing it out in your head while listening to the song, and you just kind of count it out like 5 beats every time like the phrase ends. It's like, yeah, you're right. It doesn't really seem strange, but it's just strange enough.
What does that mean?
5/4 instead of like 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So it doesn't starts over every 4 beats in one measure. It does 5 beats in one measure. So I'm trying to think of the actual like piece of music is and it's actually it beats out 5 beats instead of 4. So it's kind of like it's slightly off time. And honestly, he really slows down and speeds up his tempo during parts, which is, I don't think most people will do. They would just like change the what music was played, not really the speed that it was played at, the tempo of the music. So it's kind of strangely orchestrated. I think it was only like really orchestrated like with like 4 days. Like he came up with the whole soundtrack in like 4 days tops. What I was reading about online the other day, and. Yeah, it's just simple. Just I don't know.
It's so neat that I love hearing you talk about music because it's like that is something I can talk about. I like this song. I don't like this song, but I can't talk about why music works. Like you understand that much better than I do. What I like about Carpenter's music stuff, and again, you see this again in Big Trouble in Little China and They Live specifically. Those are the other soundtracks that really stick out to me that he did. I like of him as like the anti-John Williams, where John Williams, he conducts orchestras, right?
Yeah.
It's like he's very over the top, where like people who hear me say this are gonna laugh at me because of the neophyteness of my music and the uneducated ear that I have, but I almost compare him to like a Philip Glass, where it's like it's more minimalist sounding.
Yeah.
Right? It's more simple and not quite as over the top as John Williams, like
not
Jaws.
as many pieces involved.
Thank you. I can't articulate that the way you can, but I can hear it. Like I can hear the difference. Like the Jaws soundtrack, most famous horror soundtrack ever. We can all agree is Jaws, right?
Mm.
Yeah. Like even with the shark hits, like there's a lot of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's like the equivalent of the jump scares. He throws a shit ton of sound at you, whereas in this movie, like you just get that one little sound.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah, the little stinger. Yeah.
Stinger. I like that.
Yeah, it's the horror tune for the whatever it is, that little the jump scare sound effect moment. whether you actually have the action happen or not, or it's a fake out. Just supposed to poke you, poke you awake, make you stop talking to the person next to you and start paying attention.
And it works. But what I like about in this movie, like even in Jaws, when it goes, like when that hit that freaking shark is coming at you. They don't always scare you with the stinger in this movie, right? The stinger, like you said, it just tells you to pay attention. Something's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know when. Just you know that it's going to happen soon. Like that shadow shot that I just love. Like I love the way Michael Myers' face pops out of that. But again, you hear that sound well before, and you know it's coming. Like you see her standing by that chair, like, oh, he's totally going to come out of that shadow. But it still freaking works because Carpenter is a good filmmaker. He's one of the best true indie filmmakers ever because that man just made movies on his own, fairly low budgets for the majority of his career, and did a great job telling the stories that he wants to tell.
Yeah. I'm a huge fan of subtext in films. Like, one of the things I'm starting to learn more as I try to learn how to write is to try to actually do text. I feel like I'm really, I can pick up on subtext and like explain subtext really well, but sometimes when it comes to the big overarching themes, like I'm still learning things every day. But
Yeah,
watching this again,
lot,
I was like trying to pick up on all the subtle subtext things that we're trying to like teach you about, like the when Laurie's in class and she's taught, when she first sees Michael Myers standing next to the car outside.
Oh yeah,
talking about
the faith conversation.
Yeah,
right?
The whole faith conversation. Like, okay, that's a little, subtle nod to like the force of nature and fate, and you can't change things.
There's nothing subtle about that. That is as subtle as a ball peen hammer to the head. But it works.
So I was trying to. There was another moment there I noticed something. There was obviously a drop in when she's alone in her bedroom by herself. There's a big poster, and it's saying it's an artist, like a painter named James I think it's Ensor is his name. I'm like, I wonder what that means. It's just Carpenter's like a fan of his, or if there's something like subtextually about it. And just a guy who was, I think he was a Belgian artist from the turn of the century, 1800s, 1900s, and just drew a lot of paintings of guys in like disfigured masks.
Really? See, I noticed there was a painting there too, but the second the camera cut away from it, I forgot about it. I'm glad
it was just like the painting itself. I think is like a self portrait of the artist, a self portrait of the artist Like, yeah, I think I explained it up with self portrait.
So it was a self portrait, is what you're saying?
Yeah, I also thought there'd be more subtext than just that, though. I don't know why I thought it'd be a deeper meaning. I was almost let down by it.
Well, maybe it's just
creepy.
Again,
I dig too deep sometimes.
Like sometimes I think that there's that like sometimes a cigar is just a cigar. Mm-hmm. You know, the Freudian joke. I think we're kind of led to believe stuff. Like there's a famous Sam Raimi thing where in I believe it's in the movie The Hills Have Eyes, Wes Craven movie. There's a poster of Jaws that gets destroyed, or they're watching Jaws on TV or something like that. And then in Evil Dead, they destroy. There's a poster of The Hills Have Eyes. It's saying, hey, that's not horror, this is horror. And then in Nightmare on Elm Street, Johnny Depp's character's watching The Evil Dead on TV. So, I mean, like, sometimes they do that stuff just as little winks and nods. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's meant to say something further. I don't know. I think it depends on what mood the director is in at the moment.
Yeah. And I was trying to look for, like, color schemes and color ideas, and the whole color scheme, the colors are very muted throughout the film, which gives it a really cool look to it. The only color that really ever jumps out a lot is like the color red or like dark orange. And it's, you can obviously have, pumpkins. It's obviously is a reference to Halloween. And a lot of the orange coloring is from Halloween effects, like a pumpkin or a bag for candy and things of that nature. But I kept thinking of like Godfather. Like, there's the blood orange look to things where it kind of foretells bad things are going to happen now once the origin comes out. And there really wasn't
I think it's
direct
I like
correlation.
John Carpenter a lot, but I don't think he's Coppola.
It was just like, it seemed like red and orange were like, just, I'm going to have these colors occasionally. Just occasionally. Just every now and then. And kind of make them like one small part of the frame somewhere.
So I think the color, I think the color that's meant to jump out at you more than anything is white.
Yeah.
Like, it's the color of his mask. It's also the accent marks on the clown mask that he wears at the beginning.
Yeah.
You know, I think white is the color that's meant to. It's also the color of the insane the mental patients, you know, smocks. Like
Yeah.
I think white is a danger color in this movie more than any other,
Yeah. Yeah.
which is
It's like
weird because
every
you think
good
about the
horror
good
movie
guys
though, it's
more.
kind of inspired a little bit by like German expressionism, where it uses shadows and light
Oh,
really, really,
for
really well.
sure,
I think
for sure.
Hollywood does a really great job. Another reason why the movie can't be really made the same way it was today is that everything is hidden by darkness so much that the natural
It's dark.
instinct for many producers or directors would be to kind of let's show the grit, let's overshow it, let's show like every pimple on like his arm, let's show like the hairs, let's like light him up like crazy, and then we'll throw shadows in there kind of a little bit.
It's funny you say that because that's even in the production design, like the new Michael Myers mask. There's so many, and Rob Zombie did too. There's so many like cracks and bumps and like over designedness to the mask of Michael Myers.
And it's just to make it different, you know what I mean? And that's
Yeah.
I think, yeah. It's
Like,
hard to say what are you going to do as an homage, and what are you going to do as signature you. And
Well, I think
everybody
that's the
always
problem.
tries to like over explain, over detail as their signature thing instead of underdo. Yeah, more is less.
I think that's the problem we're having in cinema today is because everything is a callback to something else. And it's not just used to be all art is either an embracing of or a rejection to whatever comes before it. Like we're past that and to the point where everything is old as new again, you know? And and so like we wind up spending half a movie playing fan service to the people that are coming to see these movies. So you get all the callbacks rather than telling a story, which is why I like watching this as opposed to a newer Halloween movie because this is the movie. You know, there's no callback to anything in this. It's just a movie that it can watch it in a vacuum and not worry about anything that came after it. You know?
True. Yeah.
So I guess what we're saying is like I think that we both agree that the movie holds up. Like, I think that if you're looking for a modern day Rush movie where you're gonna get like thrills and screams and like you're gonna grab it's not that movie. It's if you watch it for what it is, it's a stalker film, like Matt said. It's a movie about a guy following a girl, more so than murdering. And it is about a lot of murder. Don't get me wrong, but I don't think there's any gore in this movie. Like, am I wrong? I don't remember any blood.
There's some blood, but not the way you think there should be in a slasher movie.
Right.
Not the way that it's like Dario Argento, like lit up neon, glowing, like takes up the entire frame mixed with like stained glass behind it to make it stand out more.
Or Wes Craven where the bucket of blood is falling from the ceiling.
Yeah.
Like, there's nothing like that. But I think it's more of a visceral film. And if you watch it as a film as opposed to just like, I'm going to watch a Michael Myers movie, I think you get a lot out of it. Like this Halloween, if you get a chance, you get an hour and a half to spare. It's on Amazon Prime if you don't have DVD. I would suggest sit down and watch Halloween. It's I don't think you'll regret it. I mean, like, tell me what you think. Like, hit us up on superheroespeak.com. I'm sorry, edit. Hit us up on the Twitter page at superheroespeak. I'd like to hear more about what you guys think about horror stuff. This was actually suggested to this show. Someone said, "Hey, you guys should do what you do for comics with horror films," and I went, "Oh my god, I want to do that." And I don't know, maybe this is a thing that we keep doing. I like talking with my brother, so this is something that maybe we do if people dig on it. I'm enjoying this a ton, but let me see what you guys like. Like, tell me what you think. This is a bonus show specifically for Halloween. And because I was too lazy to watch Daredevil Season 3.
And I'll just go out and say, watch the bad movies too. The bad movies make you appreciate good movies. If you have time, just watch the first Halloween. If you have time, watch them all. Even the Season of the Witch. Even the third one, it's absolutely terrible. Because you'll know how terrible it is by watching in comparison with the first Halloween. And it'll just make you appreciate the first Halloween even more.
I cracked on Season of the Witch a lot today, but I'll be honest with you, I would much rather watch Season of the Witch than Halloween's 4, 5, and 6, or Resurrection, or the Rob Zombie movies. Actually, like Season of the Witch is a spectacular failure. Like there's some big ideas in that movie that just go over like a turd. But there's some good stuff there. So, but yeah, this show is not about Season of the Witch. Well, maybe next Halloween we'll revisit and talk Halloween 3, Season of the Witch. I can't think anyone ever done a podcast on that movie.
Yeah, no matter what, though, it might be a terrible movie, but there's no way that anybody will be able to get the Silver Shamrock commercial jingle out of my brain.
Happy, happy Halloween, Halloween, Halloween. Happy, happy Halloween, Silver Shamrock. Happy, happy Halloween, Halloween, Halloween. Happy, happy Halloween, Silver Shamrock.
It's almost time, kids. The clock is ticking. Be in front of your TV sets for the Horror-thon. And remember the big giveaway at 9. Don't miss it. And don't forget to wear your masks. The clock is ticking. It's almost time.
Happy, happy Halloween, Halloween, Halloween. Happy, happy Halloween, Silver Shamrock. Happy, happy Halloween, Halloween, Halloween. Happy, happy Halloween, Silver Shamrock.
Ah, God, I hate that song. Ugh. So that's all for our special edition Halloween Superhero Speak. We'll get back to normal next week on the show. Thank you very much. And don't let your cape get caught in the door because it could suffocate you and cut your head off.